Oh, what's
How's it
up?
going? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Pretty good. We're excited for the FOMC meeting, so just kind of sitting around waiting for the Feds to speak today.
Totally. I mean, that's super relevant to what we're talking about, with crypto regulation in the US, because there's a ton that's happening right now. So definitely important to, educate everyone, I guess, what's happening, there's kind of a lot of different sides to crypto, whether you're super involved in like the arts and culture side, the tech side, or the regulatory side. So, thank you so much for joining us today. Super excited to be talking about crypto regulation in the US. Make sure you're following at It's Joshua Jake. Make sure you're following CoinDesk. And be sure to double tap the screen to get some likes. That'll push us to the For You page so more people can see what we're talking about. And yeah, comment any questions. If you want to send gifts too, that's always appreciated. Yeah, so I guess, are you ready to get started? Introduce yourself a little bit to people coming from CoinDesk. I know you've been on for a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so I'm Joshua Jake, guys. I do pretty much just crypto analysis I cover a lot of energy sectors regarding Bitcoin mining, and then I'm excited to talk about regulatory clarity because that's something I've been covering since the XRP lawsuit took place, Ripple lawsuit back in December 2020. So, I kind of cover everything from altcoins to now even NFTs a little bit, and really just anything in crypto is really what I'm covering and researching. So. Hopefully today we can discuss a little bit about, regulatory clarity, thoughts on what's happening with the executive order. But yeah, I'm excited for this year. We're going to see a lot of things happen in the crypto space this year.
Totally. All right. With that, I guess we can get started. So, first topic, which was just pretty recent. The Biden administration's news of preparing a directive to be released next month on crypto regulation in the U.S. So I guess just to start off, what do you think this means for crypto markets, and what do you think the White House's stance on crypto will be when this directive is released?
Yeah. So I honestly think it's going to come out more as just like a political football is what they're trying to use it as. I think, the executive order, you have your multiple branches in the government. They're already tackling, your cyber security. You have obviously your SEC trying to regulate crypto and claiming they've regulated it, but then everybody in crypto is saying, "Yo, we have no idea what's happening." So with the executive order, I think it's going to kind of set a structure, just a proposal for the government to actually start taking cryptocurrency seriously. Because back in May, when we had them come out and launch their CBDC, they didn't launch it, but they're asking the public for their our opinions and everything. I think this is something that's going to go well into 2023 and well into 2024. So the executive order, I think, is overall really bullish for crypto. I don't like using those terms as much, but as in it is adoptive, right? So we're going to see a lot of open discussions in Congress and ultimately our different branches of the government trying to figure out where CBDC or cryptocurrency kind of plays a strong point in our monetary policy. Because you obviously have your economic, then you have your monetary policies, and then you have security. So they're going to be focusing on those three different sectors with this order.
Totally. And I want to take it back to what you were talking about CBDCs. Can you just define exactly what a CBDC is, CBDC versus a stable coin, just to kind of give some clarity on that?
Yeah, so a CBDC, guys, is a central bank digital currency. So it is going to be a centralized stable coin, kind of is how you can think of it as, to make it as simple as possible. But it's going to be a digital token of the U.S. dollar that is launched by the central bank.
Yeah, and I guess clarifying that versus stable coins. Why might some people be pushing for a CBDC versus pushing for a stable coin? I guess what are the pros and cons of that? Because I know the Fed just released its CBDC report stating the pros and cons of a U.S. central bank digital currency. So. Yeah,
definitely. So this actually kind of ties into the executive order as well. So for a central digital currency, it comes down to with the stablecoin, USDC, USDT. There's a lot of controversy on the two subjects. But with the stablecoin, it's going to everything is going to be public and on the blockchain per transaction. So you can track everything through for USDC or USDT. You can go on Etherscan and see everything that happens within the transactions of that stablecoin. With a central bank digital currency, they're going to be focusing more on a privacy ledger, meaning hopefully a lot of the transactions, and that's a whole nother discussion is whether it should be private or not. But central banks do
Mhm.
not want, open public ledgers where everybody can see the transactions happening within its ecosystem. So it would still have the same functions as a stable coin, but there would be a lot of different securities and privacy measures that a central bank would take upon that CBDC versus the stable coin.
I see. And that those measures that a central bank would put in place, regulating this currency, that might entice some people versus the privacy might entice some people. I guess, what does that say about, I guess, the pros and cons / some worries about, who's coming to the crypto space? I guess, what are the sentiments around that?
Yeah, so the pros and cons. I mean, from a government standpoint, off the rip is going to be security. There's a lot of things they don't want that's going to be transacted to the public. They want that completely private in their own currency. From the pros are going to be though, you're going to be able to track transactions and see everything that happens within that network. So there's going to be a lot less. It's going to be a lot less trust on a central entity. So stable coins, and people, this is where people get kind of confused. They think a CBDC will eliminate a stable coin. That's not necessarily the case. For example, USDC in their congressional hearing on December 8th, they're using T-bonds and everything to actually back the stablecoin reserves. They're pegged to the US dollar. So a stablecoin is a 1-to-1 to a US dollar, which means, one stablecoin equals one US dollar. So, that's something that actually can improve our monetary ecosystem. And ultimately, they can set up off ramps that will support a CBDC. And so that is actually something that's going to be discussed in this executive order, and kind of set up infrastructure to figure out what those on ramps would look like, and how stablecoins could support the structure of a central bank digital currency. So they kind of, in my opinion, I think they're going to go hand in hand, and kind of support.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm just seeing a comment right here. I would prefer peer-to-peer, nothing centralized. And that's a big part of the difference is that, you're having, whether or not these coins might be the same in the way they work, if it's, tethered to a US dollar or whatnot. And the central bank digital currency is essentially the same thing. The centralization of that is a huge part. So, there's no third party when you have stable coins versus central bank digital currencies. That is, you can track all of that. It's not private. So definitely that is some of the big differences there. But super interesting to see. I mean, yeah, kind of taking it back to the executive order. How do you think that regulation might change in the next couple of months, given this directive?
Yeah, so I actually think it's going to be something that ties into midterms this year, with the elections for that I believe is in November. But I think regulations are something that it's coming in crypto. 2022, it's opened up discussions. We saw it briefly discussed in 2021, but this year is going to be mainly focused on countries, really adopting it. So with Biden and the executive order with his administration, today Putin just came out and is now trying to fight their central bank in regards to, just their regulations on crypto because he wants to keep Bitcoin mining. But ultimately, in the United States, I think it's going to be something that is used as a very large political football between just your two parties. And so I think right now we're going to focus on just regulating it. So what is crypto? What's a stable coin? What's DeFi? And they want to just regulate exactly what the use cases are behind crypto. Following 2023, 2024, I think that's when we're going to start more open discussions on a CBDC, and maybe integrations and not as harsh regulations coming towards the next election. Again, I think it's going to be just a huge political football. And until then, the media is going to be just jumping all over it on both sides. But I think it is really good for crypto. We need regulations. It's not scary. We all knew it was coming. We can't run around with they can't run around with no rules. So it's going to be really good for crypto.
Yeah. Going back to what you said about this political football, how do you see this kind of being different among party lines and parties playing into, favoring regulation or not favoring regulation or wanting certain aspects of crypto or, completely going against it? I guess, yeah. What do you see there?
No, definitely. So the biggest one is going to be something which is just energy. That's probably one of the biggest discussions from just any political party is if Bitcoin is bad for the environment. You hear the stories that it takes more energy than Argentina to produce, the Bitcoin's hash rate for their network. So, it kind of focuses down to energy. And that's going to be that, I don't know if anybody in the chat watched on the last hearing, but Bitcoin takes up, like, there's about 30% of produced energy that is wasted, just completely wasted. It is just overly produced, overly abundant, and that energy is just completely wasted. So Bitcoin mining allows to take that energy and create value out of it. So from a political standpoint, what I think is going to happen is you're going to see, two different parties. You're going to have the people that are completely scared of Bitcoin and just, want to call it a scam. They want to stick to the US dollar. They don't want change. But you're going to see the other side of this party that is like, okay, this is actually very positive for the economy. It uses renewables. We're taking value out of something that is once wasted and now creating an actual value on that can help out the economy. So I think it's going to be just interesting to see which side takes discussion, because right now we kind of see a little bit from each party. And that's why I think it's going to go really big into elections. You're going to see, a lot of advocates or a lot of politicians advocate for crypto.
Totally. And it's interesting thinking about party lines, especially with, favoring businesses. And especially, one thing that has been talked about is how crypto businesses might be impacted by this executive order. So I guess, how much of an impact do you think that it will have on this industry?
Yeah, definitely. Well, for businesses, I think anybody in crypto, I mean, I even run a crypto company at this point. You guys obviously are very well indulged with media and crypto. I think it's something that we understood, that just these regulations are coming, and you can only do the best you can to meet the regulations, and we just won't know until it happens. We've been asking the SEC with Gary Gensler for the last almost a year and a half now, and this, if you watch the Ripple, versus the SEC lawsuit, regulations are very just gray waters. It is very, very unclear. So the best thing you can do is set up yourself to be the least possible security you can be. So everybody's, claiming to not be a security, or, and you have Gary Gensler saying you're all unregistered security. So, as a company, you'll know those gray areas. And it's really, if you've been kind of setting yourself up to be regulatory compliance, we should be good with the next, year to 2 years.
Totally. And something I also think is that a lot of businesses they want regulation. They want to know what they're doing and what's going to get them in trouble and what's not. And it'll just clear up a lot, because so much of regulation thus far, as we've seen, especially with the XRP lawsuit, which we'll get into in a second, there's just a lot of gray area, like you were saying. So definitely something like that will help guide them, to understand, okay, what role is crypto going to take in our coming operations, and how can we move forward in a world where crypto is regulated, and what that looks like. So yeah,
I was going to say, I was like, I know my CFO, and personally, everybody on my team will be a lot, their heads will be a lot clearer, because it's been, there's been days, you want to take, projects with companies or something, and you're like, well, I have no idea if that's going to be compliant in a year to 2 years. So let's, it will definitely open up a lot of business opportunity as well.
Totally. I just want to see, for everyone who is joining, so it looks like we've got some new people here. Make sure you're following It's Joshua Jake. Make sure you're following CoinDesk. Drop some likes, comment questions. If you have any questions on your end, by the way, we can take them before we get into XRP.
It's mostly people just back and forth, so we can kind of keep going.
Perfect. Sorry. Wait, I missed the last bit of what you said.
I said it's most people just arguing back and forth, which is good. They're just creating conversation.
Good. Awesome. No, I'm seeing some great stuff in the chat at CoinDesk. We are waiting for regulation. It will clear uncertainty. I mean, definitely. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens. Okay, so it's been almost no, it hasn't been 2 years. It's been a little bit over a year since the initial lawsuit in December 2020. Yeah. But yeah, I guess, does it look like the XRP lawsuit will provide any sort of clarity for the crypto industry? And to start off, just for context, can you explain the basics of it and what the sides are, essentially?
Yeah, so the SEC, Gary Gensler, which actually wasn't even him that filed it, but before Gary Gensler was chair, someone known as Jay Clayton was in office, and he pretty much sued Ripple for selling XRP as an unregistered security. So this lawsuit has been going on since December, I think 20th or somewhere around there of 2020. So we've been about a year and a month into it. And there's been a lot of discussion on how this is going to affect the rest of the crypto space. Something to I think the biggest key component in this lawsuit is the fact that, Ripple is trying to argue that one, did not sell an unregistered security, but two, Ripple and XRP was not an ICO. There was no initial coin offering. So even if they do win the lawsuit, there will be a lot of clarity on what makes an unregistered security. But the biggest issue we're going to run into in the next, 2 to 3 years, especially with this executive order, it even lays it out in it, is going to be, what is the utility behind these tokens? And if these tokens do have utility, did they have an ICO? 99% of these cryptos, all ICO. You guys see their initial coin launchings on, CoinMarketCap, but on every major exchange, every single day has a new ICO coming in. So from a regulatory clarity standpoint, it's going to at least guide companies so that way they know what they can develop, what they can produce, and how they can meet regulatory compliance. But for the ones that have ICO'd, they're still going to have an uphill battle even after this. As you guys noticed with Cardano, they just got taken off eToro, because they had, they're worried about regulatory risks that are coming into play. So it will be good, but there's still going to be a strong battle ahead for the rest of the cryptocurrencies on the market out there.
Totally. And I guess following up that, because I know you just talked about Cardano being taken off of eToro. And I remember shortly after the lawsuit was announced, XRP was taken off of Coinbase. So I guess how does the market respond to these types of situations where there's regulatory concern and then, a coin is removed from a trading platform? What does that look like?
Looks just like that behind me. It's just a sea of red. You have your retailers panicking. That's all. That's the crypto for today, or crypto. Is that the weekly? It's the weekly. But yeah, ultimately, yeah, I remember the day the lawsuit launched. I saw my portfolio dump like 25%. Even if it was, I think 70%, 70 cents, XRP was probably almost $30 billion. So money moves in and out of the space very, very quick. And then immediately you see the media take storm to it, which never, isn't necessarily ever the best thing, because fear mongering takes place and you just see kind of a retail snowball of panic. And that's just where we're at. But I don't think it's something to be alarmed of. I think everybody should understand that we are, going to be meeting regulatory compliance by the next presidential election. I think everything will be kind of pushed out. That's where, going back to politics, I think a lot of this is going to be used as a political football between elections and everything over the next 2 to 3 years. You're going to have people focusing on security, people focusing on, obviously our inflation, our economy, monetary policies, and then people, just overall, you have monetary, economic, and security. So it's going to be just all one battlefield for the next 2 to 3 years.
Totally. And what you said about, regulation seeming scary, obviously when things like that happen, coin gets taken off the platform or people are talking about, threats of a lawsuit or whatnot. Yeah, it's definitely, comes off as frightening, but it is something that, will provide a lot more clarity, I guess with everything, especially in this executive order that's coming up. So yeah, are there any questions in your chat?
Pretty much everybody's asking about the Fed meeting today, guys. It's at 2:30, so right after actually our live, the FOMC meeting will be taking place. And mainly everybody's talking about that in my chat, because I've been talking about that for like the last week now. That's going to really kind of deter where we're going. Are we going up or are we going down?
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, just for people who are just joining?
Yeah. So for anybody that's just tuning in, the FOMC meeting is going to be with Jerome Powell, your Federal Reserve, and they're going to be discussing whether or not they're going to be hawkish, which means they're going to raise interest rates to suppress inflation numbers, or if they're going to come out and say, hey guys, don't panic. We're not going to just raise rates just yet. We don't want to hurt the economy. And we're they might have a couple solutions coming out of the meeting today. It's been kind of for me, as someone that researches this every day, it's been really fun just watching all these different media channels, asset managers, all kind of just trying to guess what happens today. But today is probably single-handedly the most important day since March 2020 with the FOMC meeting after the COVID pandemic. Today, with the current market conditions, it is literally going to deter if we're going to go up and see maybe new all-time highs in the S&P or just your stock market, or if we're going to go south and see a pretty rough correction.
Yeah. So I guess, thinking about that and, the sentiment that Bitcoin is a hedge against inflation and that other cryptocurrencies might not be subject to that. What do you think this has for impacts in the crypto market?
If they come out hawkish, they raise rates. Sadly, Bitcoin may be considered a hedge against inflation. I like to think of it as a hedge against oppression. It allows third world countries to just develop a currency. And for example, El Salvador, they're using a volcano to mine it, and now actually using what was once wasteless energy now produce
Mm-hmm.
value for their economy. As a hedge right now, the unfortunate part of it being the hedge is it's such a small market cap. You have like 1.5 trillion in all of crypto, probably like 800 billion right now in Bitcoin. So if the stock market crashes, a lot of that money is the same money that is in crypto. So you'll see similarities in volatility. I think though, like, if you kind of relate this back to gold in like 2008 or even 2004, after the dot-com burst and after the financial crisis of 2008, I think Bitcoin and those technologies that do have utility, they're going to stick around, or they're going to have one of the biggest rebounds, and that's going to be set us to the next bull run. So I'm kind of excited. I don't want to see my portfolio crash, but we're all here together, so that's the best we can do.
Totally. And I guess the difference between stocks versus digital assets, I guess how will those be impacted differently? I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but yeah, just for people who are coming in, we were talking a lot about the difference between stock trading versus crypto trading last week with Crypto Weatherman when we talked about TA. Shout out. So if you just wanted to explain difference between that.
That's TA out there. Yeah, definitely. And I talk to Tim almost every single day. Great guys, one of the best TAs. Make sure you're following him as well. And again, guys, make sure you're following CoinDesk. If you guys in my chat, we're doing a lot more quote streams. I think you're interviewing Lucas next week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yep, perfect. So make sure you guys give them a follow. But the difference between stocks, a lot of people like to argue that Bitcoin is a completely separate market because it's a global market. And that, to me, is my exact argument on why it's almost the same, because your global economy almost relies on the United States. Between China and the United States, there was a pretty big positions there. China kind of killed most of the position back in May when they cut off all their Bitcoin miners. And then all of that flooded to the United States, Kazakhstan, a little bit into Russia. But ultimately, so whatever happens to the US economy, that affects the global economy at scale. So it doesn't matter what economy you're in, you're going to be impacted by the decisions that the Fed make with the Federal Reserve. So there's just the similarities because of the money. And that is just because we are in a dollar global economy.
Totally. Yeah. And especially thinking about that global economy and the impact of it. There's a question back in the chat a little bit ago, but I can kick it over to you. Talk about Russia and Ukraine and what impact it might have on crypto. If you want to take it.
Definitely. I've been covering this the whole time. So first and foremost, I just don't believe Russia is going to actually invade Ukraine. I think that was, since the announcement of the troops kind of being pushed over there, you saw your media drive it just hard into our economy. The amount of times we've been threatened by either it was North Korea or Russia, we've all had these, the next World War III kind of, scenarios coming into play. What I kind of believe, and this comes back down to what we were talking about earlier, is your energy cost. And this kind of was confirmed with Putin today. Putin and Russia, they mine Bitcoin at one of the lowest marginal production costs for Bitcoin, which means they can produce Bitcoin in one of the cheapest ways possible. They also have 15% of the hash rate. So they have a huge competitive advantage of utilizing Bitcoin mining and having a majority within its network. So in my opinion, just with their energy, being at such low cost, it wouldn't make sense for them to ban it. Now with Russia and Ukraine, I still believe they're going to end up settling on political terms. Russia controls roughly 50%. They're trying to actually build a pipeline into Germany, which would give them almost 60% of the energy control throughout Western Europe. So I think there's going to be a more political side of things where they can just surge energy prices. And that's something that I've been watching and staying close on, because if they decide to raise energy prices, cut supply chains for energy, you're going to see Europe start banning more Bitcoin mining. We just saw that in Kosovo. I don't know how to say the name. Kosovo.
Yes.
You know
Kosovo.
the name.
Kosovo. Yes.
Thank you. I'm terrible with country names. I get corrected all the time. But so that's something I've been paying very close attention to. You had the media kind of reintroduce Kazakhstan 2 days ago again, that they had to shut down Bitcoin miners once again until February. So we just have to watch those energy costs. But right now, the two biggest issues in our global economy are going to be energy and then your supply chain issues.
I see. So talking about banning mining specifically in Europe, where would those operations go?
So that's a great question. I think some would probably flood to Russia. Depending on it depends though. If they're trying to threaten war, it may not be the safest thing to go there. So that's why I really believe that they can have a bigger impact if they decide they want to, kind of keep their Bitcoin mining and, launch a gold-backed stable coin like they just mentioned, they may not want war. That may not be the best, political play for them. But if they were to raise energy prices, it would force European miners to either flood to Russia for low energy costs. They couldn't go to Kazakhstan now because they're banning Bitcoin miners, or the United States. So they're really running out of options for, the best potential areas to mine Bitcoin. So, yeah.
Yeah. And taking it back to, if those operations move to the United States, how might that impact regulation in the coming months with operations moving from abroad to the US? Because I know that there has been significant development of crypto mining operations throughout North America, specifically in the US, as well as Canada, but more specifically, if they move to the US, what does that look like?
Yeah, it kind of looks like what's already been happening. So for the last 8 months, this is like really what I've covered on my channel. All your Bitcoin mining companies, they're all invested into by your very large asset managers. So Fidelity, BlackRock, Vanguard, and specifically BlackRock, they run iShares, which is going to be the majority of your ETF funds on your global stock or your stock exchange. So they just actually filed their first blockchain-based ETF, which is going to be based off cryptocurrency mining, cryptocurrency tech, and then the software behind that tech. So probably NVIDIA, Intel, that type of thing. But the more miners that fled into the United States will be overall, I believe, positive for regulations. Because the same people, your asset managers, they have tons of deals with the Federal Reserve. And an example, BlackRock, they are the ones that bailed the Federal Reserve out of debt back in 2008. So, what I would see is that, and this is what I relate Bitcoin to. I don't relate it to as a store of value. I mean, it is, but I always relate it to as a product. There is companies mining it. There is asset managers investing into those companies to produce Bitcoin, and they're going to launch a Bitcoin spot ETF in about 2 to 3 years. So the more miners that come over, I think the more adoption we'll have, and the higher the impact we're going to see when we see spot Bitcoin ETFs launched, which totally, I believe will be really good for the market.
Totally. That'll be exciting to see what happens. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up there just because I know the hearing's starting at 2:30, so want to give a couple minutes beforehand. But Josh, thank you so much. This was great. Hopefully we can talk more about this later. I know we'll be going live soon, so super excited about that. And make sure you're following at It's Joshua Jake. Make sure you give CoinDesk a follow and comment / like this, and keep following along for our content.
Always. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for hopping on.
Awesome. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.